Hi guys, I'm Joan.
I'm Juanita.
And you're students of Ghana Christian International High School. And we urge you all to subscribe to Hilltop TV. Thank you.
Hello there. You are welcome to Hilltop TV. Before we begin with our lessons, I want to remind you to subscribe to our channel and help us to grow. Good. So in our previous lesson on the National Redemption Council, the NRC, or the Supreme Military Council, the SMC1, we learned about the agricultural achievements of the Acheampong government, and that was a part one of our lesson. So on that lesson, we focused on the achievement of Acheampong. Specifically, we looked at the agricultural achievements, okay? And as I said, that was part one of the lessons. Today, we are going to look at the part two of the lessons on Acheampong's achievement, okay? And so today we are going to look at the economic and social measures taken by the Acheampong regime to try and cushion the country or to take the country away from the hardship that they had come to inherit from the PP, or the Progress Party, or Busia's government. Good. And so we are looking at the socio-economic. Okay. So if you happen not to have watched the video on Acheampong's achievements in agriculture, I have added a link in the description. You find a link in the description. Click on it and go and watch that video, as well as before you come and watch, or you can watch any of them at any time. But after this, you can watch that with the same thing. Good. So let's go in there and look at our lesson objectives for today. All right. So our lesson objectives for today will be that by the end of this lesson, you should be able to discuss the economic and social policies of Ignatius Kutu Acheampong of the National Redemption Council, NRC. So the socio-economic policies that was adopted by the Acheampong regime in order to push the country forward. And before we even begin with Acheampong's socio-economic policies, if I asked you today to tell me some of the economic policies of the current president or the current government, I'm sure you'll be able to tell me some of them. Okay, some of them, don't forget that in the banking sector, they decided to clean the banking sector. And then also introduction of the e-levy, the controversial e-levy, and other economic policies that has been adopted by our current administration, the NPP. So let's go in there and look at that of Acheampong's economic policies as in the time that he was in power. Good. So economic policies taken by Kutu Acheampong's government. The first of such economic policy was the indigenization of foreign industries. Indigenization of foreign industries. We have already said that Acheampong had a socialist background. He subscribed to the Nkrumahist idea, the African socialist, principles, and so he indigenizing foreign industries, was not anything different, or of course, not a shocking news. Now, don't forget that this indigenization, Acheampong hopes to increase state participation in the industries. Now, by this decree, such as the timber operation decree in 1972, and as well as the mining operations decree in, again, 1972. So the timber industry and the mining industry, all these two major industries were controlled by foreign investors. And it means that the country mines gold, yet the country gets, little for mining gold. So you say the country is a gold country. Meanwhile, the country has no money. The country is running to IMF. So that was the idea behind Acheampong's indigenization of these foreign industries. Some of the industries, were not totally taken over by the government. Some, just that the shares were increased. So, for instance, a government acquired majority shares, that is 55% in all foreign mining and timber operations. So all foreign mining and timber operations, the government had 55 shares. So it wasn't a total indigenization. However, the country was just to have a majority share in these companies. Now, for example, the Ghana Bauxite Company and the African Manganese Company, a subsidiary of the Union Carbide in the USA, right, at Yenchuya, was entirely taken over by the government under the new name, the National Manganese Corporation. So some of them were entirely taken over. Okay, of course, like the Bauxite Company and the Manganese Company were taken over, and they were known as the National Manganese Corporation, which then means that all the manganese that was going to be mined in these areas, the country was going to actually benefit or get 100% share of that. So in these mining industries, the manganese industry, the country was supposed to have 100% shares. And I think it was a good, a good and laudable idea or policy, because today, some people ask so many questions. Now we are mining oil as a country, and still, we still run to IMF for balance of payments, which is very sad. A country with gold, with diamond, now oil, still faces, problems with money, and it is all basically because of the fact that all these companies are owned by foreign investors. I learned the oil industry, Ghana only has about 5% share. Not even more than, I'm not sure it is more than 15% share. No. And how is that possible? So it means that you are mining oil in your country, you are an oil producing country, all right, but it is not reflecting in your accounts as a country. And so I think that Acheampong's indigenization of these foreign industries was a good one, okay? And I believe that if other government would learn and make sure that when these things are indigenous, when these industries are indigenized, proper supervision should be made so that these industries become efficient, because most of government industries are not efficient. Okay, and that is why sometimes many governments are too quick to sell these industries to private investors to do so. Okay, good. And let me give you, I think, another example, that the ECG thing. I've forgotten the name of the country, the name of the industry that came to buy ECG some time ago during when Mahama was about to be out of office. If you look at the deal, the percentage that Ghana was even going to have in that deal, I've forgotten the name of the country, the name of the industry or the company that wanted to buy Electricity Company of Ghana. You realize that the country was, the majority share was given to that particular company. And that was not so. When that happens, you realize that the country continues to suffer and wallow in poverty. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Another famous economic policy taken by the Acheampong government was the repudiation of debt, which in local parlance they called it Yenchuya Policy. Repudiation. The country had been bedeviled with debt from 1960 up to 1972 thereabout, when Acheampong came into office. Now, almost about $94.9 million was the debt of the country at that time. And Acheampong felt that some of these debts were procured under suspicious or under fraudulent, circumstances. But I don't think that was so. It was just basically because he felt there was no money to pay this 94 million cedis. And so the excuse to give was that these monies were acquired under fraudulent circumstances. And indeed, a country that is owning that much, Ghana, currently 80% of our GDP is used to pay loans. And so how do you want to, where are you going to get money for your developmental projects? How do you want to develop? So you are always owing and you are always borrowing. And I am thinking that is what Acheampong wanted to avoid, because the GDP that was coming in, if he was to use to pay these loans, it therefore means that there was not going to be any money. So Acheampong decided not to honor his international obligations with regards to loans. And so he said, Yenchuya Policy, we will not pay. He told the IMF, he told the World Bank that the country was not going to pay any money. And don't also forget that this is a country that relies so much on importation of goods. So when he made this statement, the IMF, the international communities, decided to cripple or to squeeze the economy of Ghana, whereby importation stopped. Basic food commodities that we were not producing and rather importing stopped coming in. So there wasn't food on the market. Imported goods were scarce on the market. Okay, and that is what forced Acheampong to bring, in our previous lesson, we said that Acheampong brought about the Operation Feed Yourself, the Operation Feed Yourself, okay? Because there wasn't food coming in. The government, the international community were all angry. And so then Acheampong came to say that, okay, then all of you feed yourself. You have lands, you have whatever, so grow what you eat. If you don't grow, foods are not coming in. Okay? And so that is what brought about this Operation Feed Yourself thing. And people feel that was so much good thing and all of that. Even though, yes, people acknowledge, yes, it was a good thing, but some historians also are saying that it wasn't an intended policy. It only came as a result of something. So had it not been this Yenchuya Policy, that Operation Feed Yourself wouldn't have come. But, well, whatever, that's not what we are looking at. But that is the discussions around this. So the Yenchuya Policy brought about a whole lot of issues, and that increased the economic, the hardship in the country. Let's take a look at the next one, the revaluation of the cedi. Don't forget that the Busia regime, if you remember in our lesson, we said that they devaluated the currency or the cedis. Acheampong came to reevaluate the cedis, revaluation of the cedis. And this was done to cushion the hardship facing the masses as a result of the devaluation of the cedi by the Busia government. So the cedi was revalued by 42%. You recall that we said that in the devaluation of the currency, which was done by Busia, what then happened was that imported goods became very expensive. Okay, and so I'm sure Acheampong was thinking that if we revalue, of course, the currency, what then means is that we can, import goods and blah 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 and stuff like that. So, but then surcharges on imports were also removed, and farmers were also rewarded with an increase in the producer prices of cocoa, which was from 8 euro to 10 euro per ton. And this was done to encourage farmers to grow more cocoa, because cocoa was the lifeline of the country. It was cocoa that was giving the country money. And so that is why he cushioned this, or he gave this to farmers, this motivation to, for farmers to do that. All future redundancy exercises that had been planned by private enterprises were also stopped by the Acheampong regime, because the country was facing hardship, and some of the private companies were planning on taking a redundancy policy whereby they will lay off some workers. But you see, that is some of the policies of the Kutu Acheampong regime. All right, good. So let's take a look at the social policies. As for the social policies, as we know, it deals with road, education, and stuff like that. So a number of roads were also constructed. For instance, the Nima Mambobi Highway was constructed by the Acheampong regime. Again, the Tamale Mono Road was also there. The Soronuasi Mono Road, track road, was also constructed by the Acheampong regime. Then the Bolgatanga, Boko, Kulungugu track road was also constructed by the Acheampong regime. And you remember Kulungugu. When we say Kulungugu, the area that Nkrumah there was an assassination attempt on the life of Nkrumah in the northern part of the country, the Kulungugu. That's the area. Then it was also under Acheampong's regime that the country's motor traffic adopted the right-hand way of driving. So initially it was at the right hand, but it was during Acheampong's regime that it was brought to the right way. Okay, now let's take a look at the next one in electrification and other projects. So electricity, because the country, most part of the country was without electricity, and so Acheampong did very well in sending, or in giving some of these rural areas electricity and supplying them with power. So Brekum, Wenchi, Sefirioso, Wa Suhum, Ofenso, Ashanti Bekwai were all completed. Moreover, the Cape Coast Asebu Salt Pond overhead line, which had been operating at 11 kilowatt, was energized to 33 kV. Acheampong also commissioned the Togo Dahomey transmission line, which of course made it possible for the two countries to also enjoy electricity from the Akosombo hydroelectric dam. So I know you are aware. If you are not aware, then I'm telling you that Ghana supply electricity to these countries, Togo and Benin, all right, for income, and they get it from the Akosombo dam. And so it was Acheampong who constructed that high tension line to enable these countries to gain access to electricity. Good. Acheampong also, one of the areas that Acheampong also did was low cost of housing scheme. Acheampong constructed a number of houses in the cities and some in the rural areas. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the examples. So under the low housing scheme, the state construction company had by 1978 completed a large number of projects. At the end of the phase one of this project, a number of houses were completed in Dansuman, okay, in Cape Coast, in Kumasi, in Sunyane, in Tamale, Ho, Koforidua, Bolgatanga, Sekendi, and other areas, had all benefited. And I'm told that the Acheampong did quite well in building of estates, and these were done by the State Construction Corporation, a company which was owned by the country, and that was into the construction of state houses. And housing, the issue of housing is still a problem today in Ghana, because when you go to the capital town of Accra, you realize that most people are still living on the street, and we see images of government affordable housing. I mean, that's what they call it now, affordable housing projects, which are left unattended to, and you see weeds growing up and down. There was a one just quite recently, one that came up, So I think the government still has to do more when it comes to the area of housing. The government has to do more. Even this affordable housing that the government is building today, interestingly, it is named affordable, but ironically, I am not sure that these houses are really affordable. When you look at the price, the amount that they are taking, it is not affordable. So I think that the government should do more in that regard. Every citizen must be housed. Every citizen must be housed. Okay. Now let's take a look at the field of education. In the field of education, we say that the Acheampong government came to diversify the curriculum, all right, and he included the commercial and practical subjects. So emphasis were placed on the shorthand, of course, typing, carpentry, tailoring, and technical drawing. The kind of education that the country or Ghana received from their colonial masters was that of the grammar type, the read and write, learn reading and writing. And so Acheampong had to, diversify this curriculum to make it possible for practical subjects to be taught. Okay, so some second cycle institutions were also provided with new structures, and these included story building block at the Presbyterian Boys Secondary School, known as Presec or Legon. Also, Ganata also had a share, and for Ganata in Dodowa. Then other schools which also benefited from the provisions of new infrastructure were St. Louis in Kumasi, Archbishop Porter's Girls, and then the Pramso Secondary School. Infrastructures in these schools were improved, and that was a good thing. And today, the current president, one of his also notable achievements, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, is the fact that he has also introduced free senior high school in Ghana today. But even though there are many challenges, people are having issues, and there are challenges, but I think it's a good steps in the right direction. Good. Let's take a look at, I believe this will be the last one, about Acheampong social achievement. Again, Acheampong established the Ghana Education Service. So the GES, as you know it today, was established by the Acheampong government. So the NRC in December 1973 established the Ghana Teaching Service. So when it was established, it was known as the Ghana Teaching Service. But later, the name was changed to Ghana Education Service. So in 1974, a decree was amended by the proclamation of the National Redemption Council D 357, and the name was changed to Ghana Education Service. Now, the service embraced all teachers in pre-university and pre-university educational institutions. So it comprised of teachers who are at the pre-university, so from primary school to senior high level, and also all professionals who work with the Ministry of Education. All right. So the aim was to continue to coordinate the country's pre-university educational system, and so that was also another achievement which Acheampong also did, and the GES is still playing an active role in ensuring that quality education is delivered to the Ghanaian child from preschool to the senior high school level. Right? Good. So I think that will be the last one. We've had good discussion today. Try your hand on this work. Identify any 5 socio-economic programs of Acheampong's regime in Ghana. And don't forget, this was a WASI this year's WASI, about 2 weeks ago, 2021. Whoa, so just the ended WASI 2 weeks ago or so. I think last week, it's not even 2 weeks, last week WASI. These were the points that they were expecting you to raise. That is the socio-economic. So you mix them, all right? You mix them, but you can indicate that this point is a social. So one social economic achievement of the Acheampong regime was blah, blah, blah. One economic achievement of the Acheampong regime was blah, blah, blah. Then you write it in that way. So this is a fresh topic. I mean, fresh topic with fresh question. Just the ended WASI last 2 weeks or last week. I'm hopeful that my students were able to do that. Good. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll meet some other time. Before we go, please subscribe, and support us to grow and do more. Bye bye.
TV, first among equals. Bye.